My name is Adrian Navarre. I'm the CEO and founder of TickerTrends. TickerTrends is a social arbitrage alternative data business. We collect data from around the internet from a variety of different sources, data that typically costs tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars if it were to be purchased on its own. We ingest all of this data, we put it into a platform that connects this data to financial markets, and we provide it to users at a fraction of the cost to what it would be to either integrate and ingest this data yourself or even purchase this data, let alone create all the infrastructure which we've built up to make this data useful to analyze in financial markets. So let me first start by what is social arbitrage. Social arbitrage is essentially the idea that investors can gain an edge by domain-specific knowledge. So if you know more about a certain industry or product or niche, then you're going to have some level of edge against other participants in that market in terms of investing in businesses or products or consumer brands that support that industry. So for example, if I know a lot about clothing and fashion, and I know exactly which shoes are on trend and which shoes are even changing in trends. For example, if I know that Crocs are all of a sudden going to do really well because of some new collaborations, all my friends are talking about it. I work at a shoe store and I see that everyone's starting to buy Crocs. Those are ways that you're gaining domain-specific knowledge that other market participants might not have. Now, on a more technical level, because I get this question all the time, being that I work directly in an industry where people are constantly asking me the question of how does this edge stay alive, right? Why don't hedge funds just take away this edge and purchase this data and use it themselves? The thing about social arbitrage that makes it difficult, if not almost impossible, for these hedge funds to essentially optimize out of the market is many quant funds or hedge funds rely on a lot of history, meaning they're really good at understanding things that have been happening for a really long time. So maybe they can take in some credit card transaction data and they can say, well, look, I have 10 years of credit card transaction data and I can understand how the credit card transaction data is impacting the business today and how it was impacting the business 5 years ago. And so for them, when they have a data set like that, it's really easy for them to say like, okay, I can make some really big bets with high confidence on how something is going to impact the market because I've been able to test it with the same accuracy for the past 5 years. The thing about social arbitrage is inherently picking up on things that have never happened before. So we're not looking at credit card transaction data and seeing if there's a 10% spike this year that wasn't happening last year. That's what every quant fund is doing. What we're instead doing is we're saying, hey, look, there's this hashtag that's going viral on social media that has never happened before in the history of all social media existence or in the history of the internet. This has never happened before. And we're trying to understand, well, what type of market impact is that going to have? Which for someone who understands that specific industry will have an edge in understanding the impact over someone at a quant fund who cannot quantify what type of impact that's going to have on the business until it starts to show up in their data sets like credit card transaction data or whatever else they're tracking. So that's why this edge of social arbitrage continues to be around, because whenever you use these new data sets, these things that have never happened before, and you try to price them into the market, some quant fund that's looking at a data set with 10 years of history cannot inherently quantify that themselves. So that's why this edge continues to last in the market. So that's enough of what social arbitrage is. Now I'll talk a little bit more about my business and TickerTrends and what that is. So we just recently launched an update to the platform. If you're unfamiliar with this, like I said, we're a data business. We collect all this data from around the internet and relate it to financial markets to give you an easy way to apply alternative data and social arbitrage to financial markets at scale. We operate this through an enterprise business, so we provide enterprise features to hedge funds and large institutions that might be looking to use our data, even private market participants or private market researchers. We have our very own hedge fund, so we apply our own data to markets and are able to do this profitably to gain an edge over other market participants. And this is a fully regulated US-based hedge fund where we manage external capital. And in addition to this, we also have our visual data terminal and our quant products. So like I was mentioning earlier, typically normal quant funds cannot ingest this data, but we do have a certain product which we sell to quant funds to at least help them in some sense get a grasp of this social arbitrage methodology. Now, if you're an average investor or someone who works at a fund, the ways to gain access to our technology and our software is through multiple ways. So like I said, we have the quant offering, which is for large institutions. We also have the hedge fund, which is for people who want a fully managed solution. But then we have our visual data platform, which is a visual data tool to use this data. And we have a couple of different tiers of access of this. We have a free tier, which gives you a limited preview of what it is. We have a yearly plan, which is the $1,000 a year, which is under $100 a month of access and includes a lot of value just for $100. You're essentially gaining access to data sets that would cost tens of thousands of dollars a year just on their own, in addition to research, which we have a full team of analysts who are essentially full-time looking into these businesses and writing research based on data as well, and you gain access to that as well. And then our enterprise offering is basically just a more complex, more feature-rich version of the data platform, which allows you to take all this data and really find the best opportunities in the market. So we try to offer solutions to every type of customer, whether you're someone who doesn't have a massive budget and still wants to use alternative data and gain an edge in the market. We have a lower priced option for you. If you're an enterprise and professional who wants all the granularity and data and information that you can get, maximize your edge, maximize the opportunities that you can find in the market, we have the enterprise offerings for visual access and our quant data API offerings. And then I'll show you a brief overview of how our platform is structured. Essentially, we have two different areas of the website, which is our Discover section and our Analyze section. The Discover section lets you discover opportunities with the data. The Analyze section lets you analyze opportunities with the data. So if I already know what company I want to look at, I can search for that company. I can search for any company, whether it's US or international businesses. I can search for it on the platform. TickerTrends is essentially like a search engine. We'll get related alternative data for you and give you all the tools to be able to apply that to financial markets to gauge the performance of the business, if there's any abnormal data or strength that you should look more into, and also aggregate and pull from all these different data sets that we're tracking to give you the most valuable information possible as quickly as possible. So within our Analyze page, we provide the tools for you to do that for maybe an existing business or opportunity that you'd like to gain more information on. And in our Discover section, we're essentially saying, well, out of this massive corpus of data, what are the best things that you should look at to potentially find interesting opportunities that you can act on in the market? And so I'll show you an example of the Discover section, but first, the Analyze section, this is a rough idea of what it would look like. I search for Brinker International. I can see things like related websites and different things that relate to the performance of the brand, such as the web traffic for Chili's.com, and I can compare that to price and financial data, or even look at things all the way to Instagram followers for Chili's Instagram account and relate that data to financial markets. Of course, that's the Analyze section. I can then go to Discover, and I can look at things like exploding trends, which tells me out of the entire corpus of data or different data values, what are the things that have abnormal performance and what are the businesses that this might be impacting. So if I'm looking at Pokemon cards, what are some businesses that might benefit from that? If I'm looking at car wash having abnormal performance, how can I act on that in the market? And we do this for all the different data types that we do, all the way from web traffic to YouTube search to Instagram account followers. And we make this easy to act on in the market. So that's essentially how we're taking this idea of social arbitrage and the base thesis of what I mentioned earlier, applying this to markets at scale, giving tools for all levels of customer, whether you're an enterprise professional user with an infinite budget or a small individual investor who manages your own portfolio and wants to incorporate this type of data into your research process. Which, for me personally, as someone who's been in the data industry for a while, once you start to use this data, you start to realize, how was I ever making decisions without using this data? Why would I ever invest in a company if I don't have an idea of what the consumer interest looks like for that company, what the web traffic looks like, what the social media followers looks like? Because that's a direct determinant of growth and success for that business. In the same way that you're looking at revenue, in the same way that you're reading the earnings transcripts, you should also be looking at the alternative data to gauge the performance of the brand, and we provide the tools to allow you to do that. Anyways, if you're interested in any of our products or offerings that I was mentioning in this video, I highly recommend you go to our website, TickerTrends.io. And if you have any questions about what social arbitrage is, anything that I didn't cover about the platform, if you're interested in our enterprise offerings, our quant offerings, or even our regular user offerings or lower cost offerings, feel free to reach out to us through our website, TickerTrends.io, or you can email me directly, Adrian@TickerTrends.io. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.